This is Tom Kane, the voice of Yoda in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
No matter what technical data they've obtained, this station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
You seen that new BT-16? Yeah, some of the other guys were telling me about it. They say it's quite...
She's rich.
Rich?
Rich, powerful. Listen, if you were to rescue her, the reward would be...
What?
Well, more wealth than you can imagine.
I don't know. I can imagine quite a bit.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
It's Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you, everybody. I am Dan Zehr, host of Coffee with Kenobi, and we've got a special treat for you. This is something I have always wanted to do. I'm going to see the original Star Wars on the big screen on May the 4th, and I've got two exceptional co-pilots, one Wookiee and one Ewok. It kind of depends on the day who's who, but we're going to bring them in. We, of course, are on the car en route to the movie theater first. Who are you, a Wookiee or an Ewok? It's Tom Gross.
Well, I'll take the Wookiee today. Sorry. But may the 4th be with you, Dan. This is great. I am excited to do this. It's in a theater that I have not been to for a while, and it's a classic old theater, and we're going to watch Star Wars. It's going to be great.
It is going to be so great, and you can't have great and Star Wars together, at least from my certain point of view, without the one and only Mason Zehr.
Yeah, I think I'm the Ewok, and I think it's going to be fun to watch Star Wars on the big screen.
Well, yub nub indeed. Let me give you a little background. This is the Normal Theater in Normal, Illinois, located in Uptown Normal. This theater has been around for a very, very long time, decades, and it is a classic theater that was refurbished, and they basically only show classic and independent films. They don't show current films. And it's got like all the popcorn and snacks for $1. It's got the old-time sort of window to go up to, and the theater on the inside just has that very cozy feel. It used to be the theater I would go to see White Christmas every year, which if you've listened to CWK Show, you know how special that is to me. My grandma, we called her Granny, used to go this every year to this theater to see either White Christmas or Holiday Inn. A few times we would see It's a Wonderful Life. And then one year, they showed the original Jaws. So I took our middle child, Parker, when he was probably about Mason's age now, maybe a little older, to see Jaws on the big screen. I've also seen Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark there, and I was the only person in the theater dressed head to toe in Indiana Jones gear. I thought I would be many, and I probably looked like a dork, but that's okay. It's not the first time, and it will not be the last. So this is probably historically, family-wise, sentimentally, my favorite movie theater of all time, but I've never seen my favorite film of all time. So to have that with the two of you, I just can't think of a better way to celebrate this incredible day, Star Wars May the 4th Day, and just to spend time with the two of you. So let's talk about the level of anticipation. I think the last time I saw Star Wars on the big screen, it was a couple years ago at the Peoria Riverfront Museum. I believe you were with me, Tom. But before that, it was 1997 when the special editions came out. I could not be more thrilled just to do it, and in a little bit we'll talk about kind of what specifically we're looking forward to. But what is it like for you to go to this theater and just see Star Wars again on the big screen?
Well, it's, as you gave a nice description of the theater, and so just being back in that theater, because I've seen multiple Christmas movies there as well, and Miracle on 34th Street is the one that has the best memory for me in this theater. But there's something about the big screen, the crawl at the beginning, all of that, the Star Destroyer coming over your head. It just the enjoyment of that, and the way that sort of draws out memories of childhood. I just am pumped for that sort of feel.
Yeah, I'll throw that in. To see the opening crawl and hear the music and have the Star Destroyer go overhead, that always gives me goosebumps. Seeing the Millennium Falcon, the end with the Death Star trench run, just there's so many iconic moments. The first time every major character shows up on the big screen, or maybe besides the Star Destroyer, the sequence when Darth Vader first walks into the Tantive 4 in the hallway, and they play that dun dun dun, and he looks down at everybody. That's going to be really, really special. Mason, what does it mean to you to see this theater? Because you went when you were like a baby, so you probably don't remember it very well. But not only seeing it here, but just what are you looking forward to? And you can take the...
I'm looking forward to obviously just seeing it on the big screen for the first time. And like they do so good with the effects for 1977 and what they have. And the theater, I kind of remember it, but I remember liking it a lot.
Yeah, and this is a very cool theater because many theaters now you can reserve your seats in advance. Here it's first come, first serve, and if it is busy, you know, that's very, very different. And it isn't really classic stadium seating. It's kind of tiered differently. It's almost like you could like go to the very top and just skateboard down. It's very, very classic, very nostalgic. Actually, a few years ago, I went there and saw the original Halloween. And nice. It was only half packed, but I don't know. I'm really hoping. I want the oohs and the ahs and the swooping feel because I want Mason to feel like it feels when we were kids and seeing the original. Even if that doesn't happen, it's just going to be a blast. Do you remember, Mason? You saw it, the original, when you were 3 or 4, and I put a Zoom recording device in between us, not for public listening, but just for you and I to have just your whole life. And you just kind of talking through the movie as a little kid, and which I loved. And when I hear it, I don't know that I can hear very much because I get really choked up because it's just so cute. But when you were little, the first time you saw it, you had your little pajamas on and you stood in front of the TV and you jumped up and down the whole time during the trench run because you were so excited, and that wasn't scripted, but or like pre-planned, but you just kind of did. Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, I do remember like standing up and just getting so excited. And like all the Transformers I had played before that, I was just thinking about that and if they could fly through that. And I was just jumping because I couldn't contain my excitement at all.
Well, that makes me very happy. That's so cute.
I mean, if Mason gets up and jumps around in the aisles today, that will just top off the day. But it is the audience that I'm most looking forward to today. When the Star Destroyer or the Death Star explodes, I'm hoping everyone besides me in the audience will be like, yeah, cheering for that. Applauding here and there. The first time Han Solo's on the screen, it's all of that kind of stuff where that's awesome. Above on the highway and interstate here, they have a sign, the state signs that usually have the slow down or something, says May the 4th be with you. That was awesome.
We just drove under a sign on the interstate that says May the 4th and your seatbelt be with you.
Oh, I missed that part.
And we're doing it while we're doing the show. What a great sign that is. Anybody want to say anything else before we get into the theater?
I'm good. I'm just excited for it. I'm actually looking forward to the dollar snacks. That's the best.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
We are out of the theater. We just watched Star Wars on the big screen for the first time in a while. Mason's first time in a while. Mason, I want to hear from you first, buddy. What was it like to see it in a big crowded theater like that?
It was just way different than when you're watching it normal at home, whether it's on like a phone, a laptop, or even your TV. It just feels like you're more into it and not just sitting there watching it.
Well, that makes me so happy. So would you say, and you can be honest, of course, would you say that it made you like it more, less, or the same? And then tell us kind of specifics why that is.
I would say more because, like I said, the scenes are just more realistic, and seeing them basically right in front of your face because the screen's so big is so awesome.
I will say that there were several times when we were watching this movie where I would just kind of change my focus instead of looking right at the middle of the screen, because I've seen that a million times. I would kind of look a little off so I could see the actual screen itself, and then the seats, and then just the wall behind the screen, to remind myself I was in a movie theater, because this movie is why movie theaters were invented, in my opinion. Even the sound in the normal theater, this is a theater that does not have surround sound. It's only coming out of the front speaker, the front channel. I don't think there are multiple channels there, or at least they didn't have the mix turned on for that, if that was the case. It felt kind of rustic, not bad, it just felt, and it didn't seem digital either. It just was like an old school film. I mean, it's got modern technology, don't get me wrong, but there's just something about the way they have the speaker set up, and just the fact that it's this movie, it really transported me back to when I saw this film as a kid. And I've got so many thoughts, but Tom, I want to know what it was like for you to experience this.
So I'm glad you said that about the speakers, because one of the things that I took note of is sort of the simplistic nature of the complex yet simplistic nature of listening to the soundtrack of this movie, because I felt like it sounded just like it did when I was a kid watching it. John Williams' music is so well done with it that it just, I don't know, it just was, it all sounded so good. Here's the other thing that really stood out to me today, because I haven't watched A New Hope in several years without an audience, and I don't know, there's something a little bit different about this audience than there was even when we went to the Peoria Riverfront Museum. This audience was ready to get going. They were there. It's May the 4th, very relaxed. You're in a college town also, that doesn't hurt. And so people were laughing at the lines, and it makes you realize how charming and kind of, funny the lines that Anthony Daniels and Harrison Ford had. It was just, I think when I sit at home and I watch this movie, I'm just watching it. Whereas here with the audience, we're chuckling and we're laughing and we're enjoying all the kind of little things that they did in 1977 to make this movie what it was. And that was a ton of fun to experience that with an audience.
I love that too. It was really, everyone who's ever listened to Coffee with Kenobi or Pour Over and has heard Tom on, that Tom has the best laugh in podcasting. And it was fun to hear you laughing at these moments that, when they first come out, they're funny, but when you've seen them for almost 50 years, you almost get desensitized to them, or you just don't think about them. But laughter is infectious. I think thrills, comedy, and I think horror, in theaters, those are the best, because it becomes such a communal experience. And that's why, as much as I love seeing films at home, especially on surround sound, and I like it much more than I did before COVID. After COVID, I just kind of find myself more accustomed to being at home and watching it. But there are some movies you'll leave the house to go see in the theater, and Star Wars is that. Star Wars will always be that. And that crowd, I said this before, I wanted a special crowd for this special movie with these incredible people, and that's exactly what I got. I will say, when I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark in theaters years ago, because it's on such a large screen, like you said, Mason, there's some things you notice that you're just going to notice more because it's so huge. Like some of the facial expressions that Harrison Ford made, or that Sir Alec Guinness made, really stood out to me, and it really emphasized the excellent performances. I also noticed when there's close-ups of Carrie Fisher, especially, you can see random stray hairs sticking out and stuff like that. It's just really, really fun. There's just such a rawness about this movie. And again, when it must be said, when it came out, it didn't seem like that. It just felt futuristic. But when I watch it, I feel like this movie, more than any Star Wars movie or anything on Disney Plus, through no fault of its own, there's just a rustic, dirty, grimy, rusty quality that makes it feel more realistic. Like the droids look like real metal. The sets are real sets because they're built. Tatooine is the desert, in Africa, in Tunisia. And there's just such a realness and a grittiness to it that it's never been captured before or since. And I think that is one of the reasons why I just love this movie so much.
100%. It just, I like that you said the grittiness of it, because there is something to be said about that. It's kind of like putting an old 33 album on the record player, and when you set that needle down and you get that kind of staticky, grinding sound before the music comes on, and you appreciate that and the realness of it. You know, I thought of one more thing about the humor that really worked, and that is in the line where, or it's in the area where they take the Death Star to Alderaan and they bring the princess out, and she gets all sassy with Tarkin, and it's just sort of, it's amusing in that she's just fearless in his face. But then it gets kind of scary when he steps in, and I really think that lightness and sassiness of Carrie Fisher in those lines helped to make that even more impacting, where you're like, oh wait, okay, I was just laughing, but this got serious, and so I really enjoyed that part. But yes, nostalgia galore in watching this movie on the big screen again.
It's just a good story. It's got a beginning, it's got a middle, it's got an end. It wraps up all the threads. Everybody's got their own little arcs. There's a main hero, there's a main villain. There's different little side ancillary things that happen that just make it shine. Now, Mason, when Tom and I are talking about this and talking about how, you know, the old stuff and the look of it kind of being like well worn and the sound and that's what we're used to when we were kids. But you have grown up with stuff like surround sound and massive digital stuff and just incredible stuff. When you notice that, do you think, oh, that looks old? Or does that just look kind of like a unique part of Star Wars? Or what does that kind of do for you?
Yeah, I don't think it looks super old, but also I don't think it looks super new. I just feel like it's how it is, and that's how it's made to be and what they want you to feel.
That's pretty cool. Does it give it like, does it make it feel like you're watching something, like, you know, you're watching a movie, of course, but can you tell watching this versus The Mandalorian as far as like the realistic sets and the atmosphere and the costumes and things like that?
Yeah, like while you're watching The Mandalorian, you can tell like they're using some green screen and all this technology and stuff, and then for this one you can tell it's like real stuff, but there's different images of detail in each one.
Well said. I know, Tom, before we started, you said you had a discussion point you wanted to bring up. Do you remember what that was? And if so, I'll just edit it out.
Yeah, I already talked about it when I was mentioning the music and how the music really struck me. Did you notice the person sitting directly in front of us after the 20th Century Fox and then Lucasfilm sign came up, and then a long time ago in a galaxy far away, and then you get John Williams' punch with that, the person right in front of us jumped, and I was like, have they never seen this before? Because it's that John Williams music that just sounds so great. And again, stepping back to that nostalgia of the simpleness of the delivery of that music in this setting, in the theater with, you know, I mean, they probably would call it stereo delivery of music. And it really hit. And the music itself was so great. And I picked up today a lot more of the mood that the music sets during certain parts. There was even one place where I thought maybe the music was overshadowing what was happening on the screen, like the sound effects you didn't quite catch. I wish I could say where. I'm trying to remember where that was. It was just a brief moment. Oh, it was one of the moments where they go back to, they have the setting shot of the Death Star with TIE fighters flying in, and the music punches into that transition, and you don't hear the TIE fighters until they're almost away from you. Now, I don't know if that was just the way the theater had things set, or if it was the copy that they had, or if that's how it always has been and I just never noticed it. But it didn't take anything away from the movie. It was just, it really made me kind of pay attention to how that music was really playing into the whole entertainment and storytelling of the film.
I like that a lot. The music, the sound. In fact, during the movie, there's a section early on where the stormtroopers are walking down the hallway, and there's that click clack of their boots, or like the whole when they position their blasters around. I've always loved the sounds of the original Star Wars. There are just so many nuanced sounds and sound effects. And whenever there was a toy that was released that you could push a button and hear some of the sound effects, I thought that was absolute gold. So let's talk about a scene that really worked for us today. But before that, let's talk about the nuance. And mine is just going to be the sounds of Star Wars, particularly anything Stormtrooper related, and the clicking of their armor. I love that so much.
So the sounds, I think the sound that anytime I hear it, no matter where I hear it, I think of this movie, is when Obi-Wan Kenobi turns the tractor beam power off, and you get that ooh going down. And you don't hear it often, but boy, when you hear something that's even remotely close to that, you can only think about standing on a ledge, pulling a lever down, and powering down.
Yeah, I always loved that scene. Like, I remember watching it the first time and thinking, whoa, that's so satisfying. And then I also like how they made the mouse droid. Like, they made that perfectly. The sound and the little squeak.
It was very cute to me when the mouse droid showed up and and you had this amused look on your face. It was really cute. There's also a fun moment, Mason. You know when he talked about when they first showed the Star Wars and it goes and it's really loud? Do you remember when you saw The Rise of Skywalker? That was the first Star Wars movie you saw in theaters. When that first happened, you jumped in the air in your seat. Yeah, because you were probably, 6, 7? Because it's so loud, it just kind of jumps out. Speaking of jumping out, I'll go last. Is there a certain scene, of course we're very familiar with this movie, but is there a certain scene that was just really a joy to see? And maybe it's just some of the obvious ones, which is totally fine. And there might be a couple.
So the one that, I don't know why this really stood out to me today, and I think, Dan, before we recorded, when we were picking up our coffee, before we drove home, I mentioned to you watching the documentary Light and Magic and seeing all of the background of special effects that goes into or went into creating Star Wars. The scenes that really stood out to me today were the dogfights in the space during the Death Star battle. After seeing that Light and Magic, and you know how they moved those X-Wings through space while they filmed them. Some of them are on sticks, or some of them are all together on the same prop, and so they kind of turn together and they move together. And I just was watching it today, thinking about that, and thinking they sold this. When I was a kid, I didn't think twice that wasn't real, and that X-Wings weren't really going through outer space at that time. And even today, I can still, the suture stays, and I'm totally into what's happening on screen and not thinking about what happened.
Yeah, I love, I don't know why, but when they're in Mos Eisley and just the cantina and being in there and the music playing, but the best part is when Han and Greedo are sitting down and Han shoots Greedo. It's so funny.
You used to act that part out like you were Greedo and just go boom. It was so great. Yeah, that was the cantina was such a big deal when it first came out, especially. People were just so enraptured with all these aliens. So no matter how many times you watched it, you'd always catch new things or new aspects of that. And that's what I don't really know. If I thought about a certain scene, I think when the Falcon is in the Death Star hangar, and it's just this massive, it's a YT 1300 Carillion light cruiser, as of course you know. But it's there's just something so majestic about that. And every time I see the scene where they hide themselves in their smuggling compartments, and just the clicking, or when Alec Guinness is trying to climb out of the floor, and you can tell that his tricep muscles are not what they once were, and he can't quite push himself up. But just the way he talks to Chewbacca, and Han kind of pets the top of Chewbacca, which now when I think about the mythology of Star Wars, I can't imagine that would have happened. But maybe it would have, because they have such a bond between them. But I really think it's the facial expressions that I mentioned earlier of Alec Guinness. He is such a superior actor. Because remember, this film, there was no context for it. There was no Star Wars universe. This was it. This was the original. They had no idea that it was going to be anything more than just another project. So Alec Guinness was a very, very distinguished actor of multiple Oscar nominees, an Oscar winner, very high repute. For him to even be in this was almost unbelievable. Yeah. He didn't know what he was a part of, and I think as time went on, I don't know what he thought of it per se, but he respected George Lucas. And the passion that George has, if you ever get a chance to read J.W. Rinsler's The Making of Star Wars, it's this massive, gorgeous coffee table book. You can still get it on Amazon, but there's really nothing like it to show you how incredibly difficult this movie was. And if George had known what it was going to be like, I don't know, maybe he did somewhere deep down inside. Maybe God gave that to him or something, because this thing is just such a marvelous, marvelous film.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
I can't think of better people to watch it with than you two. And then if Scott and his wife Tara were there, and then we got to see Dave Crostel there. Some of you listening will not know who these people are, but they're just good friends in our lives. And Star Wars is about friendship. And to celebrate May the 4th, seeing Star Wars on the big screen, just a spectacular thing. And gentlemen, I want to thank you both again for not only going to the movie with me, but just for, helping me celebrate the love of Star Wars, because this community becomes family. And obviously Mason's definitely family, and Tom is certainly our brother in the Force. So we're just so much fun. Any last minute thoughts or anything you want to say about this?
I think the only thing that I would say is just in response to your note of Alec Guinness is Anthony Daniels talks about this in his biography. About Anthony was an up-and-coming stage actor, and when he knew that he was going to be in this film with Alec Guinness, I remember him talking about how much he appreciated how Alec Guinness took him under his wing and kind of helped him out on this. And I don't know, when I think about those two actors, I just think that they're amazing people, and I kind of wonder, how did George get so lucky to get both of them because of their status in theater and the acting world at the time. But I guess I'll close out just by saying simply, and not close out the show, but my part, by saying, Dan, Mason, may the 4th be with you.
Yes, may the 4th be with you. And I just love seeing it on the big screen, like I said at the beginning. It's just so much better and bigger than you could imagine.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm glad it was fun for you. And just there's something about Star Wars on the big screen. You've seen a lot of movies on the big screen for sure, but it just is it's just a special treat. When in '97, when the special editions came out, the advertisement says something like 3 reasons why the big screen was made, and I think we can certainly vouch for that, as can many of you listening now. If you haven't ever gotten a chance to see the original trilogy on the big screen, especially Star Wars: A New Hope, if it's playing in the theater near you, you've got to make it appointment viewing. And who knows what's going to happen between now and the 50th anniversary in 2027. We'll be there. We'll be excited to share it with all of you, and we will see you at the movies and on your podcast feeds all around the galaxy. On behalf of myself, Tom Gross, and Mason Zehr, we will see you next time. The Force will be with you always.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.